Remember that soft teal glow from vintage cassette decks, calculators, or hi-fi systems? That's the magic we're diving into today. That's a VFD, or vacuum fluorescent displays. It's an old-school technology that somehow still looks amazingly futuristic. This is the second part of our series of vintage tubes and indicators. Today I'll show you some unique piece from my collection and explain how this vacuum magic actually works. While incandescent bulbs feel warm, VFDs always give me a cool vibe. Historically they are known for that iconic blue-green tint. But even these cool displays have a bit of warmth inside. Specifically these ultra-thin filament wires. They are designed to be almost invisible. They glow with a very faint dull red, which you can only see if you look closely, especially without a filter that usually covers these screens. Technically, a VFD is a vacuum tube, a triode to be exact. On front, we can see cathodes. There are the thin filaments. They emit electrons when heated. On background, the anodes are present. There are the segments coated with phosphor. And finally, we can see the grid, a fine mesh between them that controls the electron flow. When you apply a positive voltage to a segment, electrons hit the phosphor and it glows. By the way, that signature blue-green tint isn't the only color available. It all depends on the type of phosphor coating used. Different elements within a single display can be coated with different phosphors to create multicolor layouts, featuring green, orange, or even the much rare deep blue. No LEDs, no liquid crystals, just electrons, vacuum, and pure light. Back in the 70s through the 90s, VFDs were everywhere. Compared to early LCDs, they had better contrast, high brightness, and instant response times. But they're a bit of headache to drive. Unlike a simple LED, a VFD usually requires 2 or 3 different voltages. The first is the filament voltage, usually 1 to 5 volts AC to hit the cathode. Anode and grid require its own voltage source, typically between 20 and 50 volts DC. Why do we use alternative current for the filaments? You can use DC, but because of the potential drop across the wire, one side of the display will end up being brighter than the other. Using AC keeps the brightness perfectly uniform across the whole panel. Let's look at some gems from my collection. First up, the EV-3A. This is a Soviet classic. Each digit is housed in its own individual glass envelope. Would find this in old calculators, digital clocks, and even medical equipment. These indicators are true technical artifacts. But what's really cool is that they are still perfectly functional today, and you can easily fire them up right on your own workbench. You just have to make sure you don't get lost in the pinout. Next we have these multi-digit displays. These were the heart of the pocket calculators, like the Electronica series. And check this out, a massive 16-digit display from a desktop calculator. I actually tried to wire one of these up on a cardboard breadboard when I was a kid. Maybe it's finally time to turn it into a proper project. On long displays like this, you'll notice a grid over every single digit. This is essential for multiplexing, also called a dynamic indication. This 16-digit display has 7 segments plus a decimal point per digit. That's over 100 segments, Imagine if every single one has its own pin. The tube would look like a centipede. Instead, we use the grids as selectors. We turn on one grid at a time, send the data to the segments for the digit, and then move to the next one very quickly. It's exactly like the scanning process in an old CRT television. Now for something unusual. There are single column indicators with 7 pixels. They don't even have a grid, since it does not support multiplexing. Each dot has its own dedicated pin. These indicators were often used in large public wall clocks. And here is one of my favorites, the audio level meter from a Soviet tape recorder. In the 80s, this was the peak of technology, bright, animated, and multicolored. People still harvest these models today to build custom audio setups. It needs a split power supply, plus 15 and minus 15 volts, plus the filament voltage. Unfortunately, I think the controller chip of this specific unit was given up the ghost. By the way, speaking of VU-meters, I am actually planning a truly unique project, centered around a very specific and interesting device. You would not find much about this on YouTube, so stay tuned. Even today, VFDs are not dead. You'll still find them in high-end medical gear, industrial equipment, and so on. You can find more complex VFDs that displays text, numbers, and different custom icons, or even graphical displays. Take a look at this, a universal VFD graphics.matrix module. This is a beast. It has a built-in Cortex-M4 CPU, handles all the high voltage generation internally, and even has its own font tables. You just give it any voltage from 5 to 24 volts, connect via UART or SPI, and you're good to go. I've even written a small Python script to stream data directly from my PC using a simple USB to UART adapter. And even if you don't want to mess with data lines just yet, there is dedicated demo mode switch. Just flip it, apply power, and the display plays a built-in animation movie, showcasing its full potential. This is where retro aesthetics meet modern backend power. Combining these vintage displays with modern microcontrollers like the ESP32 allows us to build some truly unique gear. That teal glow is something that new LEDs just cannot perfectly replicate. It's pure tube aesthetic in the modern world. But VFDs were not the only things glowing before the LED revolution. In the next video I am going to show you something warmer. Something involving high voltage and actual electric flame inside the glass. Can you guess what it is? Drop your theories in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe, so you don't miss it. Keep building, and I'll see you in the next one.